Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show. I am coming at you with a very special guest. Secretary of State of Illinois, Alexi Giannoulias, is joining me today to talk a little bit about basketball, maybe how that intersects with politics a little bit in Illinois. And Alexi, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, man. It's great to see you. I'm happy for all your success.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, we do go way back, I suppose. Should there be some full disclosure in terms of, in case you don't know out there, Alexi was sort of the little brother of the guys we played basketball with at high school who would be tagging along and then jumping in those games. I believe you were like in 8th grade when I was a senior in high school. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And you could hang. Yeah. You could hang even back in 8th grade, and that actually was and showed us how far you're going to go later on as you played in college and then in the overseas. So I think let's first of all talk a little bit about how, with your job right now, if you felt like basketball helped you or influenced you in terms of the kind of things you have to manage day to day, being the Secretary of State.
I would say tremendously, and I think sports in general, but especially basketball, like all the lessons that you learn every day from going to war with your teammates, right? Like teamwork, camaraderie, grit, dependability. Determination, like having a goal, trying to win certain games, having a game plan, all those lessons on how to get better. How do you get better every week? How do you get better every day? How do you get better every year? What do you do with your summers? Like, how do you learn from your mistakes? When do you take a bad game and just say, screw it, let's move on? Like all those lessons, to me, I use in my career more often than not. And I will tell you, I think it has made me a much better leader. I think being in the higher level you get to play in sports, I think all those examples all those adjectives, right, they're all magnified. And so I think about that every time. And when I think about managing and leading people and leading an agency, I draw on those experiences more than you could imagine.
Well, we both come from a different era of coaching, and I talk a lot about that every day on Twitter and on YouTube about the methods that we used to use as coaches. And I experienced it as a player, and then I probably was guilty of it, using things like anger and disgust, and ego as primary communication methods. And I'm kind of curious, was that the kind of thing that you experienced? I mean, no, we shared a similar high school coach or the same high school coach. And then beyond, when you got into the upper levels, were those kind of qualities that you noticed and that were, did you find ways that thought maybe that wasn't as effective as they could be?
So I think for sure, based on what I'm hearing, times have changed. There was a lot of shit that you can't get away with anymore that you could do back then. I happen to respond well to that family where discipline was in our day-to-day life. So for me, that resonated. It worked. That's not the case anymore. I went to visit my alma mater at Boston University last year, and I remember talking to the coach and some of the players, and I was like, man, I used to hate it when they used to make us run as punishment. And they're like, we're not allowed to do that anymore. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we were running like sprints and 17s all the time when we got in trouble. And I said, yeah, we can't make people run for punishment. I was like, again, I don't want to sound like the old guy who's saying people are soft. I just think times change, and that evolution is very interesting to me as a spectator. I can't imagine how difficult it must be as a coach.
I'll just interject this because not necessarily is it a punishment, why that's a bad thing to run, suicide or 17. What we discovered was, I think in the science was that running back and forth in a straight line at a predetermined distance simply is not basketball. And so I know you might respond to this. I know when I was coaching at our old high school and with a freshman, and they'd miss a layup in a layup drill without any defense, and I would blow the whistle and have them on the line and make them run. And then somebody once asked me, how does making them run that suicide help them make more layups? And I had no answer for that. And that's when I stopped doing that and realized, what was the answer? How about shooting more layups? And I feel like that whole mindset, even though you might have this whole notion of like, oh, it's soft, I think we've been evolved in a way. And I would imagine that certainly even in day-to-day situations in your office now, that makes sense and that resonates, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. And I think, again, I'm not judging the effectiveness of one method versus the other. I'm just saying that for better or worse, times have changed in the way coaches interact with their players, the amount of assistant coaches, the amount of different people you could go to. Like in high school, we didn't even really have an assistant coach, literally. And in college, we had 2 or 3 guys. Now you go to an NBA game and the first row is the team, the second row is like assistant coaches. And again, I don't know whether that's good or bad. It's probably a good thing that there's that many more outlets. There's a lot of individualized lessons, like coaching, that I think is relevant. Here's one more thing, not to sound like an old man, just so you know, I spoke to a high school a couple of years ago, and I mentioned running suicides, and the place went nuts. Like, you can't say that word anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't even hit me that, in this, again, in this new world. And so I apologize profusely. And so it's just, it's different times.
Absolutely. And I agree with that too. I never liked that. We used to call them guts back when I was in grade school, running more than I ever did since then. But certainly they shouldn't have a name because we shouldn't be doing them. And there's lots of drills you can do that will train, focus and all the things they're looking for. Now, it seems like basketball was a sort of a central part of your political growth in your career. And you were in the game in Chicago. It sounds like the game everybody kind of wanted to be in. That Barack Obama was playing in way back in the day. So I was wondering, can you give us a little insight into what that was like? Was he a good player?
Yeah, well, so I met him on the basketball court. His brother-in-law and I used to play with a guy named Arnie Duncan, John Rogers, and so I met Barack. We used to play basketball. He told me he was going to run for the U.S. Senate. Could I help him? I was like, I don't think you can win, but I'm all in to help you. And then, he won that race and he became a political mentor to me. And so to see him on the basketball court, I'm a believer that a lot of who you are, you can learn a lot about someone from how they play basketball. And was he the best basketball player in the world? No, but did he play really hard? Was he a great teammate? Did he realize when there were people better than him, he would pass to them? All those things are true. So everyone liked having him on their team. He wasn't a showboat. He definitely loved and was obsessed and is still obsessed with hoops, but to play with him on the campaign trail as he was becoming the most powerful person in the world was like, it's still crazy to think about. And to give you a quick story, when we were in Iowa for the first Iowa caucuses, I got a call the night before from one of his people saying, "Hey, can you help find a gym?" I was like, "How am I going to find a gym in Des Moines, Iowa on like a Monday night?" And so I called the only person I knew in Des Moines. I was there, literally the only guy. He goes, "You're never going to believe this. My best friend owns a gym. It's right down the street from the campaign office." So I called them. I'm like, "Hey, I found a gym and it's across the street." And they were like, "Who are you?" We only had 9 guys show up. And so we asked the guy who opened and closed the gym if he would be our 10th. He was our 10th. The floor was cold. It was cold out. We played in like literally full sweats. So a couple of guys had coats on. And then we won Iowa. Next was New Hampshire. He did not get a chance to play on primary day in New Hampshire. He lost, and he's very superstitious. So he's like, from now on, we're playing every election day. And then fast forward to the last day in this beautiful, like professional gym and on the west side of Chicago. We had like Scottie Pippen, Randy Brown. We had 4 different teams. We had jerseys. There was like news cameras everywhere, Secret Service. I remember like looking around and being like, man, we went from 9 people in this like cold, rustic, shitty gym to like, no one would even touch them. We didn't want to like, bang them up or get them scratched up. You have celebrities and like helicopters. And it's cool to see that. And more importantly, it's cool to see that he hasn't changed who he is after all these years.
For sure. Now, I think it's funny that you're praising him for understanding that he'll pass the ball to the better players. I think you're being a little bit, nice. You were one of those better players. I imagine you probably liked that he was feeding you the ball. Well, what kind of game did you have? Who would you compare yourself to now in terms of how you play?
Now, I don't think there's anyone in the league that's as unathletic as I am. So I don't know if there's a comparison. I always say there's 2 kind of people whose game I think I resemble. One, none of your listeners, viewers will ever have heard of. There's a guy named Tommy Kleinschmidt, who was a high school legend who played at Gordon Tech, played for DePaul. He may have toyed around the league for a little bit, but he was there's no reason he should have been great, but he was just a great shooter. He was gritty. He got like 110% out of his talent. Our games are similar, though he was taller and obviously way better. And then the other guy I played with before is a guy named Jeff Hornacek, who is also like a good shooter, scrappy, looks pretty harmless, but they're a little dirty. Play good defense, very reliable, and like really, really has no business being in the NBA and ends up being a star. So I think those are people who if I had to like say remind me a little bit, I'd say that. But
you know what I remember about you on those courts because your brother was on my team, and your brother was probably might have been bigger than you. I think it was like 6'4", 6'5", big, and played down low in the post like I don't know, Gasol, something like that, right? But what I remember though is you get in those games and you wouldn't be intimidated at all, and you were much shorter at that point, and but you could play. You had enough skill to be able to play into some of those games. And I think that's what I respond to now when I'm watching players at the NBA level and trying to evaluate. What stands out to me, what makes me want to go, hey, is when you can tell they're not intimidated, they're not scared of the moment, they're ready to take it over. And so I'm just kind of curious, was that always the way you were that way? Like, how did you develop that?
Yeah, I think some of it's innate, right? This is I think some of it's innate, some of it's how you're born. But I also think having two older brothers, being the youngest of three boys, getting banged on, getting beat up, like having to build your own self-confidence and self-esteem so you can hold your own with them and with their friends. There's like no better lesson than anything, whether it's basketball, sports, life, of like surrounding yourself with people who are better than you at that and spending time with them. That's the only way to improve. Like my kids, if there is a chance to be on a higher level or a lower level sports team where they can like dominate, I tell them you should not want to dominate this young. You should want to like have to struggle and be the smallest and be the youngest, because playing with people better than you is how you improve in everything. So I would say some of it was innate confidence and some of it was just like being around. I only had the option to be around kids that were older, and that paid tremendous dividends.
Absolutely. You mentioned that when President Obama was deciding whether to run for the Senate and he asked for your help, what was your role at that point? Were you in politics at that point?
No, nothing. Zippo. I liked politics and I followed it, but being a part of that statewide Senate campaign, I helped him raise money. I was like doing everything for the campaign that I possibly could. So seeing him inspire people and come out of nowhere, I mean, he had no business winning that Senate race, and he came out of nowhere. Then he gave that speech in Boston, became like internationally like recognized household name in literally 24 hours. That was extraordinary. That obviously is very rare. And so when I decided to run 2 years later, against the machine, I was the first candidate he ever endorsed. We just continued to help each other's career. And so, it's pretty extraordinary. Pretty extraordinary to see. You see him. I see him like in magazines. I'm like, that's so weird that he's in magazines, or he's on a TV commercial, or he's like on Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm like, I can't believe he's like on Jimmy Kimmel. My wife's like, what do you mean you can't believe he's on Jimmy Kimmel? Like, it's just weird to me that he's, famous still.
I do. The one moment I might have from Chicago to Los Angeles back in '96 was I feel like might have been able to sneak in that game at some point and gotten connected to some of those guys too, and would have just loved it, even from a basketball standpoint. But I can tell you, if he had said, "Hey, can you just film me walking around and doing anything," I would have volunteered in a second. I've been all over that, and that would have been really fun. Now. Are you still utilizing basketball to leverage getting things done in your job now?
Well, since I'm not really playing anymore because of my knee issues, I leverage it, I think, in what I said earlier, which is the lessons I got from sports and being a leader and sort of overcoming obstacles and like relying on people and showing people that you can be dependable and like working your ass off to get better. I utilize those every day. Some days like directly in things that we do here in the Secretary of State's office, sometimes indirectly in how I look at long-term solutions or long-term situations that we're going to have. It also gave me, and we touched on this earlier, I think sports, like being good at sports, I should say, gives you tremendous confidence, And a lot of the things we do, the decisions that we have to make are not always the easiest ones. So to be able to be decisive, to make a decision, to stand by it, and to have the confidence that what you're doing as the right thing is very meaningful. And I got, almost all that confidence from playing sports at a higher level than a lot of people. So I feel blessed. I think about these lessons all the time. I know people who were way better than me that didn't play at the level I was able to. And so a lot of that is luck and timing and all the above. But I just had this rule that no one ever, 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 ever would outwork me. Like, I didn't care. I just didn't care. It didn't matter if I fainted and they needed to get me with an IV. No one was staying in the gym longer than me. Like, I just didn't care. It was always a cost benefit. Yes, I could pass out. Yes, someone could work harder. Yes, I'm going to sprain my ankle. Yes, I'm playing on a busted knee, but no one's going to outwork me. And I said, I'll deal with the physical cost because there's more important things. I won't be able to sleep at night if I think someone even came close to working as hard as I did.
I resonate with that as well, because that was how we were all raised back then. And we had guys like Larry Bird who would, demonstrate that for us in person. I'm a little bit worried about that now because, like, as a 53-year-old guy, I've had a hip replacement. My back is completely screwed up. This finger will never straighten. Like, we ignored all that stuff. Right. Like, does everybody have that? Is that your shooting? That's the left hand. You just ignored stuff and you thought that was sort of good. And I don't think I would encourage that from my kids, for instance. I would not want them to play through stuff that we did under the guise of being noble and honorable, whatever, because now everything hurts. I don't know what I would do about that. I want to be a little bit smarter. But what do you think? What about you? Your kids are playing and they have this mangled finger and they want to ignore it so they can keep playing. Would you let them do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would hurt me to see them in pain, and maybe this is like not politically correct, but I do think, maybe a little grit of, I sprained my ankle, it'll be purple tomorrow, but if I tighten it really tight, I can finish this game. Again, I don't want to say like I don't care about my kids' well-being, but there's a lesson of when you've done it before. I guarantee you tear the ligaments in your ankle, you sprain it, you bruise your ankle, you twist it. And the first thing I tell you, if you really want to play, is to like lace the shoe up even tighter so that the swelling goes above it. You can finish the game. I can't tell you how many times I finished a game or even a practice, and then I couldn't walk for 3 weeks, which was dumb and doesn't really sound good when I say it out loud. But I do think there's like, we all treat our children differently. We all cuddle them. I have 4 daughters. I spoil them. There might be a small side of me that would appreciate them really fighting through and proving to themselves that they can, be there for their teammates and focus on winning. But that's a trickier question.
Balance, right? Ultimately, it's like, you don't want – and also depends on what your role is in the team, right? Like, if you are a 8th or 9th person who's not really affecting, like maybe, you at 75% isn't going to help the team versus, a star who's at 80 or something like we've seen, other players do, which kind of reminds me of like – Bulls are doing all of a sudden right now. They're actually playing pretty well. Have you been paying attention to what they're doing?
Yeah, I love the Bulls. I'm a huge Bulls fan. I'm not a fair weather fan. I know a lot of former players. I know the ownership group. I am like obsessed with the Bulls. I love everything about them. I like to think that they're going to continue the success. And I hope I'm wrong, but I just think they're missing that killer at the end of a game, superstar that they can hop on that person's shoulders and like, I think every great team needs to have at least one superstar. And I just don't see that, but I hope I'm wrong and they play well. Coach Donovan's been awesome and they're fun to watch and they're exciting and they're young, but I still think they're like in this annoying middle road where they're not getting the Cooper flags and like the potential number ones, but they're not really. Them winning a first round would be surprising, which I think is like the worst place to be.
Right. I hear you. Now, speaking of like, the way they're playing, the way the game's unfolding for you, like what was your favorite action in an offense for you to get open and get a shot?
I always tell people that when someone played a zone, I got more excited than anything in the world. I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to destroy these guys now. Like that was my time to shine. Now that you don't see zones as much, but this is in the late 90s when I was playing, and zones were pretty prevalent. Sometimes teams only played zone, and I used to just I just used to murder people. I loved it. I thought that I felt so comfortable finding a seam. I felt so comfortable getting open, and I felt like my goal is to like destroy these guys and make them stop playing a zone. That was always like my happy place. I love coming off screens. I love getting to the foul line. I think that's an underrated part of what people should be doing. I see some guys in the NBA who do it really well, but getting to the free throw line, we were taught, is like, especially for unathletic guys like me, was just a boon. So I think there's a craftiness level that a lot of European players especially are able to take advantage of, that I think is a chance to help your team and to score more points.
For sure. I mean, it used to be a matter, of course, if you like faked your defender up in the air, you're going to jump into them and draw the foul. But I don't know if you're aware, it's sort of making fans, these fans today, really upset to see all manner of these, incredibly talented players drawing fouls as if that's not how the game was supposed to be played. And I'm scratching my head because I like that was always how we did it. Any insight as to how we've gotten here, why people don't want to see what they're calling foul merchants now?
No, I don't. That's above my, I don't get at all. I think there's a beauty to having a great up fake and going to the line. Is as exciting to watch people set the line for a couple of minutes? No, as a spectator. But in general, there's artistry to drawing fouls. There's artistry to up fakes. There's artistry to how you use your body to bang into someone else's and make it look like they hit you, not you hit them. That's all, like, to me, that's artistry. I don't get that at all.
Sure. I think also there's a weird part of it is, well, we're not getting those calls, and so they shouldn't get them. And that kind of thing is a little bit strange too, because I don't know, every play is its own play. And whether or not you're driving, you might not got involved. And it's just simply it. And I think that some people want to say, well, we drove 40 times, they drove 40 times, then we should get the same amount of free throws. And I think you could testify to that that's not always how it's going to work out in their actual game.
Correct. The old axiom that like 100% of the players think that the refs are wrong 90% of the time. Like, so you're never going to make everyone happy. And I think, again, a lot of it's artistry, a lot of it's who that person is, a lot of it comes down to how their body reacts to being hit or how good their up fake is. And I wouldn't be a ref in a million years. That's a brutal job.
Absolutely. Well, in that mind, when we're having such, so many arguments about everything in this world, do you have any plan? Like, how would we be able to get people to come see eye to eye closer? And perhaps can you use, sports and to do that in the political climate as well?
Yeah. So I'm optimistic by nature. I'm like bullish on the world. I'm optimistic. I find the best in people. So I might not be the right guy to ask. I think sports has the opportunity to bring people together in more than any other sort of medium. I just think right now, and I deal with this every day as Secretary of State, there's so much anger and vitriol and divisiveness that it's tough to bring people together. I will also tell you, when I was starting out in politics, social media wasn't around, right? So like this whole performative politics, and like you can just sit on your couch and like destroy people or pick and choose what policy positions, and you can follow people that reinforce your exact thinking. That doesn't make for a healthy discourse at all. And I think when I was starting out in politics, you went to dinner, you had coffee with people, you called them on the phone, you found a way to get deals done. You didn't like bang on them in social, and when you see them in person, you act like everything's fine. I mean, it's a crazy world, and so much of it is performative. I do worry a little bit about the future. I'm a big fan of live sporting events. I'm a big fan of I got 4 kids, so I don't get to do it as much, but like going to a sports bar and like just talking to people about what brings people together and humanizing people. But I am really concerned about, this political divide, which is getting worse, and we'll save it for another show. But this redistricting effort that is happening is like the worst thing that will ever happen to our democracy and to politics, and no one's even paying attention to. But I want things to get better, and I'm a believer, and you do a good job. You show people you care, you exhibit empathy, and you're in it for the right reasons. You have a chance to build a coalition of people who agree with you.
I mean, that sounds really, really good. I mean, certainly I pay attention to the politics side as well. We'll have to have a discussion about redistricting among other things. But let me ask you this as we wrap up. when you were, young, 7th, 8th grade, coming up and working on your game, did you have a goal? Like, where did you want to end up? What level was your dream to play at?
So I was oddly, I was like a sky's the limit guy. I can do anything someone says to me, I'll do, and I'll get hired than any level people can imagine. But there was never a moment in my life where I thought like I could be an NBA player. I think I just been around NBA guys and I just knew their level. And when I realized that at 6'1", 6'2", I was done growing, I still worked hard and I wanted to be a Division I basketball player because a lot of people said it wasn't possible, but I never really pictured myself in like an NBA uniform. So I had this weird, for someone who was psychotically driven on getting better and sky's the limit, I was fairly humble in where I realized my endpoint was. And then later on in life, playing with and being around some NBA guys, like it's so tough to explain to someone who hasn't played the level of the worst guy in the NBA, how ridiculously talented they are to someone who's never played before. I mean, it's literally like playing with someone who's subhuman.
Wow. Or superhuman even.
Superhuman, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm subhuman. They're superhuman.
I hear you. Now, well, how does that apply to your political career then?
I think the same thing. I think anyone who believes in their ability to do good things and run a good administration thinks about how they can continue to amplify that. But I don't like. I had a buddy who was in the White House. That life is brutal. It's brutal on your kids. It's brutal on who you are. Pressure. I don't ever sit and say, I wonder what I'd be like in the White House. Like that's like not something that I think about. But as anyone who's driven, and you think you're impactful, you want to go where you can make the most impact. I'm proud of the work we've done here. We've completely transformed this office. It's the best Secretary of State's office in America. We've worked really hard to do so. And so whether that's here or somewhere else eventually, I don't spend too much time thinking about that. I'm really focused on my day-to-day. But I believe in my ability to hire really smart people around me, and I believe in my ability to really care about people. And I think those are two pretty critical ingredients to a successful administration. For sure.
And I know you definitely haven't heard this, but there might even be an aging senator in Illinois that's going to get to the end of his career. So you might want to keep your eye on that. So, Alexi, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it. And listen, wish you the best. It's great to talk to you and reminisce a little bit about the old basketball days. And I can't thank you enough.
Thanks, man. It was fun to be on. And if you ever run out of important people, have me on again. I can talk hoops all day long and give you my thoughts and all that. But it's great to see you. Congrats on your success. I can't wait to shoot some jumpers with you.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Alexi?
I'm in.